Okay, morning Walton, lovely people. Welcome back after a strange Easter holiday. Back to online learning, not quite what we all expected. As you can see, I'm in desperate need of a haircut. The locks have grown somewhat over the holidays. It's probably all the wine I've been feeding them. Anyway, this is the start of the summer term. Normally it'd be frantic exam season. We'd all be preparing, we'd all be doing those things that we need to do for our students. It'd be really busy, hectic, that kind of actually buzz that I'm certainly missing. I'm sure some of you are as well. I'm sure some of you will have seen the update from Gavin Williamson yesterday around what's happening moving forwards. He made it pretty clear that there is no timeline on schools reopening again. Only when their tests have been met will that happen, and will be given sufficient notice, ready to plan in advance. So for the foreseeable future, we are continuing doing what we're doing. He also mentioned the launch of the National Oak Academy, an online learning platform with 180 lessons being provided every week. Having looked at them this morning, some of them look fantastic. Not all subjects are catered for, but it's certainly something that subject leads and faculty leads could have a look at, see if they could be blended into the OneNote approach that we've been using so far. Bite Size are also launching today, and again, they look really good, having looked at them this morning. A number of lessons and activities online as well, which again could be used from all subject areas, and they have got more coverage than the Oak Academy at this point in time. He's also mentioned laptops and dongles for the most vulnerable students. We were already ahead of the curve with that one and gave out in the region of 40 tablet devices just before we broke up. And even at the start of lockdown, they were being issued. So we're going to revisit that, see how many students also need that and also perhaps need the connectivity. So in terms of the updates from the DfE and the government, there hasn't been a huge amount. The next big thing is obviously examinations and exam grades. We're meeting this week just to go through, and actually, we're meeting today just to clarify what we're going to ask of subject leaders and staff around grade submission. And it's going to be a centigrade, not a teacher assessed grade. They've made that very clear. It's a centigrade. It has to be done in collaboration with teachers, subject leads, using a wide variety of evidence. And we'll hopefully get clarification around what we're going to ask people to do by Wednesday for that. I think it's really important, having had the 2 weeks away, and we've all kind of been away hopefully and had an opportunity to spend time with families and have some downtime away from kind of computers and online, which was quite draining towards the end. To make contact again with students. I think communication is going to be really important moving forwards, just to check their engagement. Even those kind of most studious students might be finding that motivation and desire to kind of keep pushing forward electronically online quite difficult and quite challenging. And I think that's going to be our kind of battleground for the term moving forwards. How we can motivate, how we can engage, how we can ensure that they're actually doing things at home as best as possible, while still kind of keeping it realistic on ourselves. So I think if we can continue just making those phone calls home to our tutor groups and just checking that they're okay, checking for any issues, highlighting any issues to the leadership team that you're kind of picking up. I've added a new sheet that Kim requested me to do over the holidays because some of the numbers are wrong apparently, which is a new contact sheet. So please feel free to use that if you had any issues with phone numbers. Hopefully that won't be 100% accurate. In terms of what we can do, so it's really difficult to plan moving forwards without having that end point in mind, but we can certainly crack on with some of the things that we know we're going to need ready for September. So in some ways we perhaps need to shift our mindset in terms of getting ready for September for the foreseeable future until we get told that we're going to reopen. So we can still push forward with curriculum planning, and Mike has obviously spent a lot of time with middle leaders and subject leaders on what that needs to look like, the knowledge, the kind of vocab, all the connections across, what that's going to look like, the planning, the intent, the rationale. So how far are we forward with that? Is that in place? Is it ready for September? Can we kind of make that as good as it possibly can be? And then link to that assessment. So can we make our assessment as good as possible? And the end point of that was the learning journeys, remember. So if you want to spend some time making a learning journey a model for us to follow, that would be fantastic. There's some great examples out there in Twitter and other blogs and forums. And then policies, there's a number of policies that you will have and we've got across the school that we're going to be looking at that we could get ahead of the curve now, get them in place, updated, ready for September, so we're not wasting that time then doing those things. Tips and pips, I'd imagine there'll be more kind of coming from the SEM meeting that's going to take place today around tips and pips, but obviously it's going to be very difficult to do performance management when you've not been here. So perhaps thinking about the targets moving forwards and what that's going to look like. We're looking at the AIP. and that will inform those tips and pips moving forward for the next academic year. But in terms of performance management, I kind of work on the assumption, as far as I'm concerned, most of those targets have been met for people, but we'll have a look at those. I think communication is going to be really key, and that is the biggest challenge for us. So please keep having those line manager meetings. Please kind of keep those channels of communication open. If you have got any issues, have got any concerns, contact anybody. Just make sure you're not at home alone, suffering in silence. Please just talk to people. Heads of house, LT meetings, Zoom meetings and Teams all seem to be working quite effectively before we broke up. So we're going to kind of resume those as normal as we start this new academic year. There's going to be invariably some students who've suffered through this. They may have lost family, they may have lost relatives, friends. It's really difficult to know. Certainly their mental health and wellbeing is going to be an issue too. So I had a quick look on Educare, and there are a number of really kind of fab courses that are free to all of us. There's ones on loss and bereavement, mental wellbeing, online safety, adverse childhood experiences, domestic abuse. There's a whole range of kind of online CPD activities that we could do and you could do now, just to kind of keep up to date, keep on top of your training, to kind of make the most of the time that you've got. And obviously Fran has sent out a whole host of resources too that you could also look at and tap into. I think it's really important, it's certainly something I believe in, that we try and get some sense of structure back to when we're working. So we do things. I know it's hard, particularly having children at home. It can be really difficult and challenging to get that time, but if we can keep on top of what we're doing in our professional learning too, that's really important. Year 11 and 13 students, they've sent some fantastic videos for staff. That cheered me up when I opened it up this morning. So a big thank you to those guys. They really obviously are missing school too. There have been some resources that were sent out towards the end of the last term around futures projects, which were released by Pixel, and I think Jess is going to follow up with some more details on that later, and there's going to be an email out later today to faculty leaders. Transition, we're going to be looking at transition with Kim, and that's certainly on the LT agenda, what we're going to do with regards to transition moving forward, so we can make sure our Year 6 students are welcomed in the new normal Walton way and get the best experience possible. I'm planning on writing some letters to parents and to students today, just with some updates. And I'm sure there'll be some updates from SEM and from the Trust as a whole in light of the things that are coming out. The feedback form, we had some really, really positive feedback, which I'll share with people moving forwards. I think one of the big things there was around the volume of work that we were setting, and that was quite overwhelming for people at home. So we perhaps need to just tone it back a little bit, think about what we really want them to do, be really clear, and start to think about how we can actually assess what they've been doing, and are they actually doing it through knowledge checks, online quizzes. 365 has got the forms facility, so it'll mark it straight away for you. There's a whole host of other quizzing apps out there and platforms, which we're going to start to look at, and I'm going to talk to Fran and the leadership team about how we might do that this week. I think obviously for year 10 and 12, they're the ones that we really need to look at and pay attention to. They're the year group that are going to potentially miss out most from this, and there's still a lot of debate around what the exam boards are going to do to make sure that they mitigate any impact on their education. So I do hope everyone is really well. That's just a quick update from me, a quick welcome back. Teams is going to go back into business. Expect to be checking emails and things like that. So we are back at work. We do need to try and keep it as business as usual as we can do. We do need to be proactive in keeping in touch with students and their families, make sure safeguarding is paramount, so that's got to be at the forefront of everything that we do. And if you've got any questions, any issues, please just pass them up the chain to us or your line managers. And I look forward to when we can all get back to school, see each other again, and get back to business as usual. Okay, bye-bye for now.